Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Whenever you are watching this episode of After Sunday, we want to welcome you to today's episode. After Sunday, the Lord still speaks. After Sunday, the Lord still speaks. I know some of you had a phenomenal church service on Sunday. You got a good word, but it's Thursday night and you need some encouragement. You need some pick me up. So we are here to do just that. The After Sunday show, sponsored by the Social Maximus. We are here today. I am your host, Donald Lee with D Lee Ministries, and I'm excited today because I have a expert here today on the show. Guys, ladies, you're in for it. Not only is she a dentist, but she's also a leadership development expert. She's a speaker, she's a coach, and she's a career transition person. And that's going to be about our show tonight. Her name is Dr. Tsitsi Hungwe, and she is a immigrant from Zimbabwe. So let us welcome our very own guest tonight to the show. Dr. Tsitsi, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing great. Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. Yeah.
So let's get right into the show. Tonight's topic is all about transition. And I know you're familiar with that word, being
Mm.
that you are a career transition coach. And I know that in this climate, we're seeing a lot of transition. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I would definitely say we are seeing a lot of transitions. And we all experienced the pandemic. Donald, we all experienced the pandemic. That was a whole transition that we all experienced and some challenges. And I remember hearing everyone keep saying, I just can't wait until we go back to normal, to normal. And that's because we were in a period of time that we had never experienced before. And we all went through that period of time. And still to this day, we are still experiencing challenges across, the world. But I still believe, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to become a career transition coach, that oftentimes, and I know you say this as well, Donald, transition is actually necessary.
Transition is necessary.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you are the founder and the CEO of Higher Mountaintops LLC. Before we go into transition, tell me a little bit about Higher Mountaintops.
Let me tell you about Higher Mountaintops. So, I am the CEO and founder of Higher Mountaintops. And let me just give you a little bit of a backstory. Back in 2021, I would say 2020, I began to go on a journey where I was searching. It's so interesting because 2020 and 2021, I was getting into year 5 of my career and I was at the height of my career. And yet, and I'm just going to be transparent, I felt empty inside. I felt as if I looked up and I actually said, "Is this it?" And I thought, maybe is this the pandemic? Maybe after the pandemic is over, I'll be back to normal. I'll feel okay. And so that was really the Lord stirring in me that there was something else that I was supposed to do. And I said, well, I'm a dentist. I'm seeing my patients. I feel like I'm making an impact. And long story short, I began to search for what my giftings were and what was I meant to do over the next 30 years. I know most people are looking at me, girl, 30 years out, like that's a long time. But long story short, I ended up in a boot camp in October, and that vision was planted, Higher Mountaintops. And what Higher Mountaintops is about at this time is we help early professionals. That's the woman that I was just a few years ago. early professionals prepare for their next transition. The irony, because I went through a transition. Prepare for their next transition with clarity and with confidence. And that's what it's really about. It's about helping you figure out what is it that you want. Number two, we're going to help you to figure out what are some of the resources that you need to be able to move into your next chapter and help you launch into action. And that's really the premise of Higher Mountaintops. And this was something that I felt was very different. And I do believe it is truly groundbreaking, because oftentimes when we're talking about transitions, I used to hear people all the time, oh, I'm changing jobs, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I used to wonder, well, what happened in the middle? How is it that you went from A to Z and poof, you just appeared out of the sky? And as I began to have these conversations in between, in the background with people, I began to realize that there were some challenges, there were some difficulties that people went through. And yet it was something potentially that people wanted to hide. And I said, you know what? I went through a lot of transitions in my life. Why don't I step into the role where I can help somebody, specifically somebody that was walking in my shoes, to help them move from where they are to where they want to be, but help them to move in that transition with clarity and confidence. So when they arrive at the top, they are not only successful and ready, but they do not feel empty. And that's really what Higher Mountaintops is about.
I love how you say that, Dr. Tsitsi. You said move from where they are to where they want to be, but do it with clarity. Now, I got to ask, because my audience is probably wondering. You did say, and I did introduce you, you're a dentist. You went to dental school, correct?
I sure did. I sure did. I am a dentist. And I went to a lot of school. So I went through school and I am a practicing dentist at this time. And I am a woman of many talents. And so I do dentistry. I see patients. I help so many behind the scenes. But I don't put myself in a box. I'm also a CEO. I'm a very powerful woman. I'm a speaker and I'm a coach. And and I'm actually walking in that now unapologetically. And I actually, you know what? I want to add something. I really struggled with this idea of putting myself in a box. A couple of years ago, when I thought about, let me go into entrepreneurship, I thought, who else is doing this? I started looking to the side, looking to the left, looking to the right, trying to get that validation to see if somebody else was doing something else. And you know what I figured out? I am the blueprint. And so I can be a dentist, I can be a coach, I can be a trainer, I can do it all, because that's what it's really about, is walking unapologetically into your calling. And that's what I'm doing.
I love that. I am the blueprint. Listen, I think I'm gonna get a t-shirt made. I am the blueprint. Because here's the thing. We all have gifts and talents in us. And I think each and every one of us, we are all the blueprint in our own unique way. Would you agree?
I agree. And I agree with the idea that, and I have this thing that I always say to people, that you got to remember there's really only one version, one you. Okay, out there, you could do a hologram, but I suppose you could make a hologram, but it's still not going to be you. So why spend your life? And I know I have struggled with this in the past, trying to compare myself. I talk about this all the time, being a middle child, looking at what my siblings are doing. And yeah, while it's great to learn from others, I've realized that, you know what? I need to carve my own path. And you know why I need to carve my own path? Because there are people waiting for me. And that's the reason why I have to walk in my own calling and be the blueprint, because there's people waiting for me.
I love it. There are people waiting for all of us.
Mm.
So, what would you say to young women in general struggling just to get started?
I would say to young women that you don't need to change. You don't need to change anything about you. And you know who said that? I'm going to give a shout out, because every time I have an opportunity in particular to highlight who speaks into my life, I put it out there because, as my dad said, no one is self-made. One of my mentors, and she's my second mom, Angela Hooper Manyfield, in our conversations in the background, has really taught me a lot about that, about walking authentically in who you are, because out of that comes how you're going to carry yourself, how you're going to bring yourself into a room. And I know we get caught up in, what are we going to do about this, and what are we going to do about this, how am I going to get this promotion, how I'm going to move to the next level. But if you're not walking authentically in who you are, it's going to create a lot of stress and a lot of tension, and potentially even burnout and lack of fulfillment. And so I think the greatest thing I have learned is to be authentically yourself, and the rest will follow.
I love it. I love it. So your story is unlike others. You went the traditional route, you went to school, you got the degree, you went into a career mode, you got the certifications, and everybody's like, what's next? And fast forward to when you made this leap. And I've only known you for a little less than a year, but the good thing is I've watched you get on a stage in front of the world and give your story. Number one, you've been featured in magazines. You've been in CEO Weekly. You've been in New York Weekly. Share a little bit about that. Is that overwhelming, or do you ever have like a pinch me type moment and say, is this really real?
All of the above. I take it in strides. So my father, I'm going to give him a shout out, Dr. Kedman Hungwe, who also shares my last name. He raised us, my siblings and I, with this belief that we were leaders and that we were able to do anything that we put our mind to. That was the kind of dad that I had growing up. And so when I had an idea, when I had a dream to become a dentist, he said yes. And actually, you're going to even go even higher. And so I guess those seeds of higher mountaintops and that confident woman comes from that father who believed in me, comes from that mother who generously gave all her life and poured into women, the unsung hero behind the scenes who's been speaking into women, hundreds of women who, some of whom I may never know who they are. And the fact that I am able to do what I am doing right now with the confidence to speak on the Leadership Experience Tour, the #1 platform for aspiring speakers in the United States, is because I had people who believed in me. At times, I've had to borrow their belief. I'm just going to be candid, until I could believe on my own. But I've always believed in my abilities. And I also believe in my source, the Almighty God, that in all things that I do it for Him. And so that is how I carry myself when I speak on stages, when I get opportunities to pour into people, the listeners today. It is because I walk in a purpose and I am aware of the giftings that I have, and that there's nobody, literally nobody like me. And so it would actually be selfish of me to not make myself available. And so when I focus on that, that's what keeps me going.
That's awesome. You are listening to After Sunday, sponsored by the Social Maximus. Do me a favor right now. Go to Dr. Tsitsi's website at www.highermountaintops.com. You want to get connected with this phenomenal young lady because she's on the move. Look, we are so fortunate to have her tonight on After Sunday, because it's going to be a time where she's going to be over here and over there, and I'm going to have to go through 3 or 4 different people just to get her on our schedule. So we are honored. So let me ask you this, and because I'm a minister, and I got to go to Bible a little bit. Everyone knows the story of Abraham.
Mm.
And When God told Abraham to leave his familiar to go to the unknown place, that was an uncomfortable situation, but Abram at the time was obedient. Do you feel like in your life in transitioning that you have been placed in a Abraham situation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's start from my story. My story of being an immigrant, coming to this country, leaving what you know, to coming to a country like this, a beautiful country, yet it's different. You know, keep in mind when I was in Zimbabwe, and even I was there actually in December visiting family, I never even thought of myself as African or black or anything like that. I just existed. And I leave my country in the early 2000s as a teenager. Keep that in mind. Very formative year, confusing times, exciting as well. But I leave the environment that I've been a part of and I move from the city. Keep in mind, I was living in a city in Zimbabwe to a small town in Michigan because of a sacrifice from my dad to provide more opportunities for his kids. And you know what? I'm just going to be honest with you. I questioned that. I questioned the timing. I questioned why this time. I left my friends. I left the familiar. And for many years, I'm just going to be candid, the transition was very difficult. Because oftentimes we're thinking about a transition, oh, it's just moving yourself from A to B. But transition is a process. It's a mindset. And oftentimes, I know we don't talk about it because it's taboo. Transition can take many years. I went through a process from 13 up until even I finished high school. And I was trying to figure out who I was in this new environment, predominantly, an environment where I didn't see people that looked like me. And I was in that process of transition, trying to figure out who are my peers, who are my friends. And I went through that over years, and that carried over into my college years. But I did discover a little bit more of myself in my college years. That was another transition, trying to figure out what profession I wanted to go into, feeling like others had it figured out. And so I had to connect with what I was good at and connect with what areas in the medical field I was interested in. And then you fast forward, another transition, leaving my home state of Michigan and moving far away down south to Kentucky. And while that was really exciting and great, I remember starting dental school, and I'm just going to tell this story. A few days before starting dental school, I had a meltdown. And I was crying, and I was crying because as I was supposed to be celebrating this transition from student into professional school, I felt like an imposter. These are things that we don't talk about, but that sometimes we go through. I want to say that because I was able to overcome that situation, not only by believing in myself, but it was a period of time that I had to go through a transition period. And it was not easy, but I still chose to do it. And I fast forward, I graduate and I become a dentist. And fast forward, I'm telling you the story of how I was searching during the pandemic and decided to change gears and go into entrepreneurship. And that was a journey. I'm just going to be candid with y'all because y'all need to know this. I did not know anything about sales. 5 years ago, you would ask me if I would have become an entrepreneur CEO, I would have laughed at you. Why? Because I did not have an awareness, but also because of fear. Fear that this is something unfamiliar and nothing that I really knew, and that I was supposed to stay in my lane. And yet I chose to go into entrepreneurship because I knew I was a good communicator and that I had a voice to share with the world. And out of obedience, I am walking in my calling. And there are days that I don't fully understand the calling that I'm walking in, but I continue to walk in it. Sometimes with fear, but I do it anyways because I know that this is greater than me. And the legacy that I will leave will be of benefit, not only for now, but for generations. And so I totally relate to the story of Abraham because his obedience has left a legacy, not just for now, but for us today.
I love it. I love it. So, as we wrapping up tonight, you have just tuned in to After Sunday. And I want to just tell you, it was a pleasure having you on tonight, Dr. Tsitsi. I need for each and every one of you to go to her website at www.highermountaintopsllc.com. I'm going to also let her tell the audience in closing where you can find her on all social platforms. Don't forget to tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on the Social Maximus YouTube channel. Give us a follow, click that link, and also don't forget about myself at D. Lee Ministries. That's DLEA Ministries, a ministry of hope, a ministry of power, a ministry of truth. Can you give us a closing thought as we wrap up, Dr. Tsitsi, and let everyone know how to find you on social platforms?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I just want to give a word of encouragement to the viewers today that I am actually just like you. And the reason why I say that is because I'm a human being doing extraordinary things, but that's because I've had the courage and the boldness, and I'm listening to the voice within. I want to encourage you, if there's something nudging you, if there's something that is nudging you, don't delay. Don't delay and say, I'll do it tomorrow. Don't delay and say, I will do it next week, because tomorrow is not promised. And your yes is an opportunity to potentially help somebody else out there. And impact looks differently for everyone. There's a quote out there by the retired basketball player, Maya Moore. She said, impact is not just about going far and wide. It is about going narrow and deep most often. And I want to encourage you to impact your community, those within your sphere of influence, and aim to impact those within your sphere of influence deeply in a capacity that will leave people better than they were before they encountered you. You can follow me. You can follow me on my Facebook page, Higher Mountaintops. You can follow me on my Instagram, Dr.T.Hungwe22. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Tsitsi Hungwe. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You are the transition expert. I'm going to close on that one. Once again, you have just tuned in to After Sunday, and you will find all the links in the bio. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you. And I want to close with just this. First and foremost, love God. Secondly, love others. And lastly, love yourself. I am your boy, Donald Lee, with D. Lee Ministries, and this is After Sunday. We are out. Have a great week.
Bye.
Hey, good people, it's your man, Shawn the Casino. Thank you for clicking the link and joining us on another episode of After Sunday, brought to you by the Social Maximus Network. Make sure you guys subscribe and click the notification bell. Every week on Thursday night, we'll be bringing you new episodes of After Sunday. We'll have new guests and new topics every week. Make sure you guys tune in. I see you.